Hey, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to look at Datasmith again. I know we had a first part that was put out recently, and we were just looking at the new feature that we had as far as a Datasmith importer with Twinmotion. We of course still have that, but that last video was more of a, let's see what we can do just out of the box, just trying and experimenting. What I spent most of the time doing, it was a decently long video, but what I spent most of the time doing was trying to get multiple exports or multiple imports into Twinmotion from the same Revit file. And that's not exactly what it's meant for. So like I was hoping that it was meant for design options, that we could use that, but nonetheless, it's not quite that. So the best thing to do with design options, at least from what I can tell at this point, would be to still export them as an FBX or even use the export view from Datasmith. It really is the same thing. So besides that, we're going to look at Datasmith in this video for what it's really supposed to be used for, and that is integrating multiple different files, whether it's Revit or not, but multiple Revit files into Twinmotion at the same time. So the idea being, maybe you have a separate building model like we have here, and then a separate site model like we also have here. So before we get into it, if at any point in this video you happen to learn something, which I sure hope you do, we're going to cover a lot, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out. Okay, so again, here we are. We have two separate Revit sessions open, one of which has the entire site for this model, and the other of which has the whole building. And so the idea at this point is maybe you have an extensive site model, and this site model hosts multiple buildings, multiple projects. And I've worked on one of those before, and it's quite daunting. But besides that, it's not only daunting to work at within Revit, but working within Twinmotion. So how do you put all this together? So that's where Datasmith importer comes in. Of course, we're in the Datasmith tab within Revit after we downloaded the Datasmith importer plugin, and I'll include a link to that in the description below. But really all we do is we need to end up sending this information into Twinmotion, and using this importer, we can get both of these in at the same time. And so I don't have them linked into each other, nothing like that. I simply have each piece. So typically what you'd have is a site model, and then you have the building, and you have the link from, you have the building, and then you'd have the site linked into that. So you can have it all in one model. We wouldn't have to do that necessarily, but it's something that I probably would do. So the idea being here at this point is I don't have that, and it doesn't matter because I'm just going to sync everything. And because they do happen to line up, and I know that they do line up, it will work out really well. Okay, so if we want to first include these two models in Twinmotion, we have to import them. So if we hover over here, we can see click here to import file or create Datasmith direct link. That's what we want. We really want the Datasmith direct link. So you might think, well, I'm going to synchronize here and then take it into Datasmith. Well, or take it into Twinmotion. This is more so after the fact. So we're going to start in Twinmotion, and we're going to click import, and you'll see we've got that import direct link, and that's really what we're after. And so we can see that we have your source and then how we want to collapse that by. So your source, in fact, I have two separate models open, and you can clearly see this. I have two separate models. I have two separate Revit sessions. And so we're going to start with the site. So we have the site here, and I can collapse that by material and whatever. I want to keep the hierarchy at this point. So I'm going to click OK. And once I do that, I have now linked it essentially into Twinmotion. And you'll look around and realize, well, there's nothing here. What the heck's going on? If I expand this, you can see there's still nothing here. So at this point, it's now time to synchronize. So I will need to synchronize this project, and it will send this using the link that I've established and then place it in Twinmotion. So here we go. Here's my site. There's really nothing fancy, nothing that we really care about right here, at least right now, because I don't have a ton of materials applied. But the point is we have the site. And so with this, let's do the exact same thing, but with the building. Okay, so we can come over here, import, and then direct link. And then I want to choose the building itself, or the house. Here we go. And so at this point, I'm going to, again, keep the hierarchy. I'll click OK. And then so you can see I've got my connection there. And then I want to synchronize this. And so my hope is that the building will plop where it's supposed to, and it will just show up here. And it looks like it's being brought in right now using the direct link. And then there we go. Look. And so not only do I have my building, which is completely separate, but I have it on the site correctly. And these are each from separate Revit models. Really cool. So if I expand the view here, I could see, you can see I have my 2 Revit models, which we just saw, which is really great. I can hide them individually and we can see them individually. We can do whatever we normally would want to do, whereas move them around, whatever you want to do. We have the same options that we have normally within Twinmotion. And we're used to all of that. It's more or less that we now have them linked together. So, there's a lot that we can do here. So now that they're essentially linked, everything that we're doing in Revit can be reflected back into Twinmotion like immediately, because we could just then resynchronize this view and then have the updates be seen. For example, maybe we want to delete these roofs. I'm not sure why we'd want to do that, but let's go ahead and do that. Yes, that's fine. We'll get rid of the roof and then I'll synchronize. And as soon as I synchronize it, we, obviously our roof is gone. It's that quick. It's that easy. And so I want to come back in here and maybe we come back to Revit and realize, not the best idea. I can undo that. So maybe we come back and we realize, I like the roof. So let's go ahead and resynchronize that because that was a mistake. We'll put that back. You'll see that the roof does in fact come back, which is really nice. But maybe we get down the line and we realize, we're getting ready for presentation. And for some reason we realize we do not want to show the roof. We don't want the roof. We can simply delete that roof in Twinmotion. And so obviously we have every piece that is its own entity, and that's based on the way I brought things in to Revit, or it brought things into Twinmotion. That's kind of the power of bringing these things in the way that we did. And you could see that through the direct link settings here. And if I choose that, you could see there's keep hierarchy, there's collapse by material, and then collapse all. We are very familiar with these. So if you're not familiar with these, go check out my importing into Twinmotion video. That's very important and will give you an idea of how to best use all of these. But really, I like to keep the hierarchy in 99% of the instances because I have full control over every single element. And so that's great. I want to keep that, and I have that option. And so you can see that the roof is gone, but maybe we get through the presentation and we realize, what, it's probably not a good idea. The roof is gone. I probably want the roof back. So how would we go about doing that? Well, we could always come back into Revit and then synchronize, and it would just throw the roof back because the Revit still has the roof. Now, maybe we don't have access to the Revit model. Maybe, I don't know. As long as you have the connection, this can work. And so the idea here is that let's go ahead and look at the settings that we have to work with. And that is reset transform on selection, reset materials on selection, and then re-import deleted objects. And this is applying to the link, this Datasmith direct link specifically. In this case, it's the building. And because I, in Twinmotion, deleted the roof, I can now then bring that back because it still has the connection. It hasn't synced anything different. It knows what came in. So let's go ahead and re-import deleted objects and see if the roof comes back. Look at that. Immediately the roof comes back. It works like a charm. Re-import deleted elements. And that makes sense because, again, I have not synced from Revit again. And so it's referencing the same data, which is great. Really easy to do that. Really cool. And nice to know that you have a lot more control over that than you might in other programs. And so if we look at the other options we have here, we have reset materials on selection. So that's kind of interesting. So maybe it really has everything to do with applying a material in Twinmotion and realizing, I probably want the material that the model came with. In this case, maybe from Revit, you built a material and then it shipped into Twinmotion and you want to keep that. So to do that, I'm going to actually open a separate file here, and it's just a pool backyard. I have actually applied materials to this project. And so what I'm going to do at this point is go back to import. We'll go to our direct link, and I'm going to choose that backyard design, and I'm going to collapse this by material just because that's what we're looking at. I'll click OK. And so at this point, we can see that it's not quite in yet, but I need to synchronize. And once I synchronize, we can see it populate up here. And with that done, I'm just going to drag this up and probably just rotate it just so it looks a little more oriented to this site. So if I zoom in here, I can see, well, these table and chairs, they came with materials from Revit. Now, obviously, some of these materials are pretty terrible, but let's say, for example, we replace this particular material. So let's do that with just a wood or something like this. There we go. Bring that scale up some. And so we can see, yeah, there it is. It's wood and it looks pretty good. But maybe we realize, I don't want that material. I don't know why, because the point in my mind is that you have these materials and you're trading them with nicer looking Twinmotion materials. But okay. So once I select this object and then we go to reset materials on selection, note that it has to be selected. If I just click this and it's not selected, it won't happen. But if I reset materials on selection, I then get that nasty kind of yellow color that I had before. So cool, that's fine. It's something that you can use. I don't see myself using it all that much, but I will say, at this point, you'll also notice here at the bottom, and maybe you have even before this point, that I now have some different icons down here. So I've got the site model, I've got my original building model, and then I've got that backyard design. And you'll come down here and you'll see I just see Revit, and I see what these different icons, and these icons are representing a broken link. So this broken link is telling me that I don't have that program open, or I don't have that model open, or for some reason I've lost connection between this Twinmotion file and that particular Revit file, or that particular link, whatever it might be. So what do we do here? Well, it actually is pretty automatic, which is really cool. So it's not going to impede you in any way. It's just telling you that this is not connected. So if you synchronize or whatever, you won't get the updates. So I've gone back to this overall view here of my basic house. So that's the second model. And because I've done that, you might think that this link should not be broken. Well, as soon as I click the Twinmotion window, I assume that I will have this link reestablished because I'm looking at this model directly. So I'm going to click that, and sure enough, when I click back into Twinmotion, that link is now reestablished. Now I can come back and go back to my backyard design, and you can see I've lost both of them. Well, once I click Twinmotion again, I now have that backyard design. So I could have all of these in the same Revit session if I want to. I just can only access one at a time to sync, which is fine. You're not going to try and sync 4 at a time. It doesn't make sense anyways. So I could then sync this back in. I could then come back here and I could sync the other house back in. So I have lots of versatility here because I have multiple files, and I could sync those in all within the Revit session, the same Revit session. That's really cool. I first laid out multiple sessions just so you could see that it's not the same model. So the last thing we have yet to look at is this reset transform on selection. So let's go ahead and maybe, for example, we want to move this roof. I don't know why we'd want to move the roof, but let's say we want to move the roof way up there. Well, we might come back at some point and realize, we don't want the roof there. We don't want it floating. It doesn't make sense. Or we just brought it up there for a second, and it's going to be really hard for me to determine, exactly where it was. Like, I can get close, but not quite. So what I can do is come down to the link, and I can reset transform on selection. So I actually have to select the element. So be aware of that. But once I do that, then that particular element that I had selected, the transform will be then reset essentially. It's almost like I'm resyncing what I had synced before, but remember, I'm not actually going into Revit and syncing that, because if I did, it would put it back. But at the same time, it's just pulling from the previous sync that I had synced from Revit to Twinmotion. So that's something to be aware of. And then finally, this is really nothing new, but the direct link settings, of course, I can change like in the middle of working, I can change the way that these are collapsed. So currently I have this by material, and maybe I want to see every element that's within my building itself. I can choose, okay, it's going to basically relink everything in. And whenever I expand this window, I can see, all right, so clearly everything within my house is selectable. It's its own object. So I have a lot more power over that particular element, which is really cool. And that's really what I want. So let's come in here, and I want to try this out because, if you saw previous videos of mine on using the direct link with Revit, like the original direct link, you might remember that the replace did not necessarily work. So like I wanted to replace doors whenever the animated doors came out. I wanted to replace doors. So at this point, let's go ahead and I'm going to choose this front door and then these side doors. So I get an idea of, a few of these doors that I might want to change out with Twinmotion. So let's come over here, and I have these selected. So let's go ahead and right click this. And I want to choose replace with replace object. There it is. And so I can choose any object. Of course, at this point, I want doors, which is kind of the point here. So objects, doors, rotating doors, and really any one of these doors. And honestly, I like that door, so let's go ahead and do it. And let's see if the replacement works. I was told that it does work. And if it does work, this is going to be absolutely game-changing to getting models synced in from Revit and actually continuously updated, and to the point where you can continue to work within Twinmotion, not have to replace things on your own and whatnot. So let's click Start Replacement and see if we see these nice new doors within Twinmotion. I'm hoping and praying to this point that it does work with doors, because that's really what I want to see with this new tool. Here we go. That's awesome. Okay, that worked out as expected, actually. So this is really cool, really exciting. So if you know how the doors work, I can click on these doors and I can just move it, and it's going to snap right into that opening, which is awesome. Like, look at this. This is fantastic. This is so easy to use, and I replace them. Like, I literally replace them with Revit elements. So this is, honestly, if you weren't excited about the Datasmith importer, you should be now, because I have all these different sizes of doors, and all of a sudden they're beautiful. They're matching the openings within Revit, and I'm synchronizing this directly from Revit. So maybe I'm just going to keep experimenting here because I love this. And so at this point, I want to hide the roof, but I want to be able to see these doors, and I want to change some of these doors, just maybe one of the door sizes, so we could see what happens whenever I update it and hopefully the doors stay and everything. So let's go ahead and change this from this size door to another size door. So I'll come into the door type, and maybe we'll duplicate this, and we'll just make this a 2-foot door instead. 24-inch door. There we go. So the width will be 2. And so we can see there in Revit, I now have a 2-foot door. So let's see what happens when I go back to the Datasmith importer, and then I resync this. Well, that was unfortunate. That was kind of what I expected, but you can see yes, I do have that 2-foot door, but I do need to replace it again. The nice thing is that I didn't lose all my other doors, because that didn't change. So mainly the thing to be aware of is if something changes within Revit, it's going to come in as Revit, purely Revit. And that applies to anything. Maybe you replace trees that you have in Revit and you want to replace them with Twinmotion trees. That's going to apply as well. So that's okay. That's kind of what we expected also, because you have to go through the motions of trading everything out into Twinmotion from Revit. And so if you do affect it in Revit, it's going to come back in as a Revit. Whatever. Not a big deal. So really, that's going to do it for our Datasmith importer. If we wanted to look at anything else, it would be the export 3D view, which is really, in my understanding, is the exact same thing as the export option from the normal Twinmotion direct link. All that to say, I do have one more thing I want to show you, and it really is the versatility of this new Twinmotion importer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to a new scene, and I don't need to save this, but I'm going to go to a new scene here, and I actually have Rhino open. And I have Rhino open with a 3D model of Groot with a Christmas hat on. Really cool stuff. I downloaded the Groot and then added the Christmas hat to myself. I ended up 3D printing this. So all of this to say, we have lots of options when it comes to Twinmotion. We now have the Datasmith importer for Twinmotion, and that works with Revit. It does not yet work with Rhino, but I'm going to show you how we can use it with Rhino. So I do have the normal direct link from Rhino, and I'm just going to hit Synchronize. And I just want a new project. That's perfectly fine. I don't need to save this at all. And so we've got our Groot here. What I might do actually is increase the scale, increase the size of Groot. And I'll increase him by 5 times. Okay, so Groot's pretty big. We're going to synchronize him, reload him in. Cool. So let's go ahead and give him a material or 2 just so he's not white. Of course, he is wood. That makes perfect sense. This wood probably looks pretty good on him. That, and then of course I have the Christmas hat as well. So maybe that'll be just some basic colors. All right, and that Groot looks pretty good. He's got his Santa hat on. It's fine. And so at this point, I have direct link Groot from Rhino into Twinmotion. So at this point, I also want to now direct link my house and my site into this particular project, because I could have all this together. So that means we could have not only multiple Revit files working together, but even of course within Twinmotion, but also a Rhino file or any other type that works with Twinmotion. So I will now come over here to my direct link, and I just want to choose my site again. Let's go ahead and we'll keep the hierarchy, click OK. This will be brought in, and I want to do the exact same thing for my building. I want to make sure that I choose the building, collapse my material. We'll go ahead and keep the hierarchy, click OK. So with all of that brought in, we can come over and see what's actually in my Twinmotion project. Well, of course, it's a lot of stuff because I kept the hierarchy, but we've got Groot, and then we've got the house and then the site. So the main thing to be aware of is that whenever I direct link from Rhino, I don't have the option of moving any objects. You can see I can't move them. You'll see I have no transform options here at all, which is too bad. So what I can do is select my objects that I've linked in from Revit and bring them down. So I almost have, because basically Groot is stationary. It's kind of stuck where he is. And so I have to end up moving these things around where he's going to be. Or I can move him around in Rhino. It doesn't matter, one of those two. So I can just move him around, move these around to the point where I can have him where I want to on the site. So like, there we go. Not looking too bad. But we finally have Groot on the site. And I can hide the starting ground. And so there he is. He is working. It looks fine. It's not quite what you'd expect to see outside your window, but this is an example of Twinmotion working with linking all of these different programs together. I have multiple different Revit projects. I have a Rhino file. So like all of this is working together in unison, which is really great stuff. I can always come back in here and unhide my roof. I can do absolutely anything. I can send this back, and once I sync it again, and you can see there's just a lot that we can do here with multiple. So the idea being, if we do see a Datasmith importer from other programs such as Rhino, then we could do the exact same thing that we're doing with these multiple Revit files, but also with multiple types of programs, which is really cool. You know, maybe you end up modeling something in Grasshopper or Rhino and realize, well, you know, there's not a great way of getting that into Revit. Now, Revit 2022 will allow that to happen, but, you know, not as easily as the direct link with Twinmotion. So like, why not use that? I mean, really, that makes so much sense. So honestly, this is the way to go. So I hope you did learn something. This is a long video, but we went through really everything that we might want to know with Datasmith importer for Twinmotion 2021.1. I'm really excited about it. We can replace doors. That's so cool. That's the biggest thing here. The biggest takeaway. So if you did happen to learn something, please demolish that like button. It helps me out so much. And I hope to see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.